Well, what first comes to my mind is that, well, I guess there should be a caveat that, as you say, or you alluded to in your question, we hear many things when we go to these places, told by the local panda or someone, and we know ourselves that how things can become modified or adulterated in time. Like paramparjena prakriti by chitra, something becomes modified by the temperament of the receiver. But just setting that aside or factoring that in when we hear things, and we want to be respectful, we don't want to commit offenses. But so put that aside. What comes to my mind first is, one name of Shiva is Girish, or can mean like Giri Isha. Like here we have Giriraj. So, and we say Giriraj Govardhan because Giri, there's a place called Mongol-giri, Giri, Parbat. There are different names that indicate mountains, mountain or mountains. So, and Shiva's abode, Kailash, is mythically located in such a domain. And when you go to Badrinath, that, well, now I don't think you can go, but Kailash at present, perhaps it's located in China. So I don't know if you can go there now, but you go further, deeper in the mountains, and you're in Kailash. So mountains are always associated with Mahadev, and as I thought, Giri, Girish, like the metro stop in Calcutta, Girish Park. Girish, that's Shiva's name. His wife in one incarnation, what is her name? Parvati, Parvati. So those are the kind of things that come to my mind. I don't have any specific Shastric reference, but those are the sort of things that do come to my mind. And another thing is Srila Guru Maharaj mentioning when he was traveling in South India that there are a lot of Shiva worshippers there. And this classic argument about supremacy is not only there, but it's all over India. We know we're in Bengal. Really, they're Shaktas. Puja means Durga Puja. That's the biggest festival of the year to this day in Bengal. And Ma Kali, Kali Puja, other things. And so you go to different parts of India, one particular god or goddess is in vogue. So when Guru Maharaj was in South India, there were lots of Shiva temples. And this argument would come up, who is supreme? And we see actually it finds its way in the pages of the Bhagavatam and Brihad Bhagavatamritam and others. Because it's a question of perspective. From a particular perspective or point of view, someone may be taken as supreme. Like we say, Vaishnavanam yata Shambhu. In the Bhagavatam it says that. Sometimes Guru Maharaj will say, that is for propaganda. It is to bring those followers toward the conclusions of Srimad Bhagavatam. He said, because when someone would say that to him, he said, well, if you look in Brihad Bhagavatamritam, you'll see where his position is. Above Brahma, below Prahlad. And this we qualify as saying, factoring in that there's Shiva occupies three positions, Bhog, Tyag, and Bhakta. And may not be necessary to go into that now. But, so Srila Guru Maharaj saying, in South India, when this subject would come up, he would choose to deal with it in a simple way. We know there are very complicated arguments, sophisticated sort of things. I remember when I went to India first many years ago, almost 40 years ago, sometime to show you something of the Sukriti of India. It's a place where even recently with Gurudev, we watched Sanskrit news. They have a station on TV where they give the news in Sanskrit. Sometimes Gurudev would watch that. So I remember when I went, sometimes in the newspaper would be an article where a journalist covered a debate, like a debate between Shuddha Dvaita and Vishishta Dvaita, or Advaita. And it would, the story would say, and His Holiness such and such Swami, he maintained, and it would have some long philosophical point, but that was countered by His Holiness such and such Swami, who said, and then there would be Sanskrit. So these kind of, there's that way, Madhva debated that way sometimes, Ramanuj, and then there's the very simple style, sometimes employed by Mahaprabhu, as in the case of Venkatabhatta. So Guru Maharaj, when possible, sometimes very simple ways of making a profound point. So he would tell them, he'd say, we always see Mahadev in meditation. The classic pictures, he's beneath the banyan tree, which we hear is 800 miles wide and not full of birds, very quiet. He's meditating. Guru Maharaj would say, upon whom? Upon whom is he meditating? When Srila Gurudev at the Govinda Kunda established that Shiva Mandir, he gave the name Gangadhar Sadashiva. So we know specifically which Shiva he's talking about in terms of Bhog, Tyag, Bhakta Shiv. Gangadhar, who's carrying the Ganga on his head, and Sada Shiva means beyond Viroja in the Vaikuntha world, Bhakta Shiv. So Srila Guru Maharaj would say to them, this Ganga, it is the foot bath of Narayan or Vishnu or ultimately Krishna. And he's taking that upon his head. So that shows that he reveres them as being in the superior position. So, matter solved. But someone will say, well, we see in Ramayana, for example, Ramachandra worshipping Shiva. What about that? And Guru Maharaj would say, Ramachandra's as a king and as a householder, showing what is appropriate behavior, sanskar for such a person. So in that context, he's worshipping Shiva. So I would take it that the Pandavas, in a similar context, where is appropriate, they're giving recognition to Shiva. Now this brings up an interesting dilemma ontologically. Because in one place, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, Kamaishtaishtaya Hritagyana Prapadyanteva Devata. Tam Tam Niyamamastaya. He said, Hrita Kamaishtaishtaya Hritagyana Prapadyanteva Devata. Those who worship the devatas, their knowledge is skewed, distorted. And it's out of calm that they're approaching them. So I just heard a tape this morning where Srila Guru Maharaj was reminding me in one place where I said, oh, Yudhisthira Maharaj, we're told he had to see hell. He's saying, yes, we should remember when we hear something like that, or Arjuna was in illusion, or the Pandavas did this, it's to teach some lesson. And he said, and there's the external aspects of things and internal aspects of things, and their play and their pastimes within this world, and their permanent position spiritually. So, also with Shiva, interestingly, in the in Sanatana Goswami's Brihad Bhagavatamritam Teek, which is his commentary on his own book, where he's quoting the Padma Purana and the offense, Sri Vasya Vishnur, etc., where it talks about not to see the demigods on an equal level, right, with Vishnu or Krishna. Interestingly there, he parses it in another way and says, it's also offensive to think Shiva is less than Vishnu. So we know, according to Brahma Samhita, what is that sloka? Kirab, I can't think of it, but the sloka in Brahma Samhita, where it's comparing Mahadev, Shiva to yogurt. Yeah, no, where it's has the word kir in it, as milk can be transformed into yogurt, dadhi vikar vishesha yogat. Something I can't recall it at this moment, but saying that Shiva, like milk can be transformed into yogurt, Shiva's like that yogurt, but yogurt can't be transformed back into milk. So that means he can hold both positions, or as we mentioned, 3, Bhog, Tyag, Bhakta. Right? So from one point of view, we can say, yes, not to equate the Bhog Shiv with Vishnu or Krishna, but Bhakta Shiv, you shouldn't think any less, that will be offense. So it'll be one way is offensive to Krishna, the other way is offensive to Shiva, and we don't want to offend either. So the devotees, like we see in the case of Srila Gurudev, really, he's looking, because he has this affinity for Shiva, he's seeing toward the absolute center what is his position. So frequently we'd hear within a short time after mentioning him, Gopeshwar, the guard of the Rasa Leela. Right? So he has, as we told in the last conversation, when we hear about these different demigods, should we think what is known to us, right, is unknown to them? From one point of view, like when Guru Maharaj would say, Brahma, Sukha, Shiva, they're aspiring for a drop of this divine substance. So we'll see certain instances where Brahma is bimohan, he's deluded, but deluded by what? Krishna, it's Krishna Leela. Right? It is not conventional Maya. So one context we're seeing him as the head of the Sampradaya. Another context we're talking about Brahma Vimohan. And this is not a simple matter. No less than Madhvacharya, Srila Guru Maharaj said, he eliminated chapter 13 from the Srimad Bhagavatam. He couldn't digest that the head of the Sampradaya, in Guru Maharaj's term, could be seduced, or Brahma Vimohan, put in illusion. Right? We see in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the pastime of Mohini Murti, that Shiva is bewildered by this divine manifestation. And not to leave it there, just while we're on the subject, Baladev In the Brahma Vimohan Leela, we're told the morning that happened, that pastime occurred, was Baladev's birthday. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's that. So he didn't go that day, as Yogamaya would have it. And he wasn't cow herding with the rest of the boys. Yashoda kept him home, Rohini, and they had he was the birthday boy. So the birthday boy wasn't there when Brahma stole the cow and all of that. Right? So we're told a year later, it's a year, an earth year, a moment in Brahmaloka, that there are 3 levels of Yogamayic influence over Baladev. And Vishwanath makes the point there, how extraordinary Yogamaya is. So that even Baladev, he wasn't aware that this happened. A year later, we're told, a few days before it was a year later, he went from the 3rd level to the 2nd level and started making certain observations. Then from the 2nd level to the 1st level, things were becoming more clear till it all vanished and he realized that, and marveled at how even he didn't know what Krishna had done. That's something extraordinary. Like the Hang Vedmi, Sukhaveti, Vasuveti, Naveti Va. This is part of the beauty of Krishna consciousness and reminds us to be humble. That there's no final adjustments in the sense of a static understanding of what's taking place at any given place and time, especially related to the pastimes of the Lord and His divine servitors. So, what do I think? That's Brahma's, I was thinking of something else, but still. So what is his conclusion? Jnane prayasamurapasana namanta eva. Not to inquire in the sense of interrogation. We can follow this up to a certain point. The bewilderment of Arjuna and Bhagavad Gita, of others and other context. So, certainly the Pandavas, they're all, Parshada, Bhaktas, eternal associates of Krishna. So their worship of Shiva is pure. It's all in the Nirguna plane. And that's one thing I wanted to say. I didn't get the opportunity on the disappearance day of Ramananda Roy, which was a few days back, that we're told, and remember, this is deep in the Antya Leela. So even it's where it occurs has significance. Pradyumna Misra asked Mahaprabhu to speak Krishna Katha. You think, well, that's a very simple thing, right? Mahaprabhu's response is peculiar, Krishna Katha Ami Janina. He goes, I don't know Krishna Katha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya, Radha Baba, Radha Baba, Duty, Subolita, who's enriched with the heart and halo of Srimati Radharani. I don't know Krishna Katha. I heard from Ramananda, he's qualified to speak Krishna Katha. And I recommend that you go and hear from him. You're very fortunate that the desire, the eagerness, the earnestness to hear Krishna Katha has sprung, manifest in you. But I'll send you to Ramananda. That's who I've heard Krishna Katha from. So I recommend him. So this in itself is something extraordinary. We would think from one point of view, I mean, it's Mahaprabhu himself saying, Jari Dako Tari Kaho Krishna Upadesh. Wherever you go, whoever you meet, speak to them about Krishna. On one level, of course, it does say Krishna Upadesh. So you could say, oh, well, like the instructions of Krishna as given in Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere. And if we wanted to say that, well, Krishna Katha might imply some sort of more intimate pastimes, that's all right too. But it cannot be ignored or denied. This is not something simple. This is the Antya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamritam. And this point is coming out. Mahaprabhu was saying, no. Vikreditam brajabadu virtam jabishnu shradhan vato anushranayad atavarnayed yat bhakti param bhagavati pratilabdya kamam hridrogam ashvapi hinoti achirena dhira. So, and we hear simple-hearted Vaishnava, Pradyumna Mishra, goes to the house of Ramananda. And Ramananda's elsewhere, and he meets his attendant, servitor. He says, well, right now, Ramananda, he is training 2 Devdasis from the Puri temple. And when he finishes with that, certainly he can meet with you if you'll just have a seat here. Finish with that. Yes, he's trained, and he's written this drama, the Jagannath Ballava Natak, and there so many ecstatic expressions will come from the gopis. So there's a system he's training them, what will be their gesture, their posture. It's like in this world, they train actors how to express certain things. Here, Ramananda, Vishakha Sakhi, is training those girls how to express what will be their gesture, their movement, their facial, everything. And they'll be dancing as well. He's training them how to dance and keeping them fit. So he's also massaging them with oil, including the private parts of their body. Anyway, when he finishes, he'll be happy to meet with you. After some time, Ramananda comes, oh, excuse my aparad, I didn't mean to keep you waiting, how can I serve you? And Pradyumna Mishra is thinking, I just came for your darshan and now I'm seeing you, I've achieved that, and that's beneficial for me. And he leaves. And Mahaprabhu, when they meet, says, so did you hear Krishna Katha from Ramananda? And Pradyumna Mishra said, I got his darshan and gave my dandavats. Then Mahaprabhu can understand some apprehension within him. And then he says, let me tell you something about Ramananda. He said, as far as I'm concerned, and it's Mahaprabhu speaking, he said, if I hear the name of a woman vibrated, there's effects within my body. At the vibration of a woman's name, what to speak of a woman's voice, its form, all that. That even the form can create some after effects. He's saying, but Ramananda doesn't have a tinge of exploiting tendency within him. He possesses a prakrita deho. Saying it looks like he's a person of this world. You'll see all the symptoms of physicality, but actually it's an aprakrita deho. Looks mundane, but is not. His body is totally spiritual. He doesn't have even a remote trace of exploiting tendency within him. And he said, there are not many Ramanandas. Ek Ramananda. Sometimes we'll say, oh, well then we have to hear from such a person. Ek Ramananda. Why not follow Mahaprabhu's advice and hear from Ramananda? Accept no substitute. So, Mahaprabhu says, I'm telling you, I'm giving my personal guarantee, you should go back and hear Krishna Katha from Ramananda. So he, now with this kind of endorsement, he goes and meets with Ramananda, and Ramananda says, I couldn't attend you properly last time, how can I serve you? Oh, I wanted to hear some Krishna Katha from you. What particularly? He said, wisely, he said, on the banks of the Godavari, the Krishna Katha you told Mahaprabhu. And we're told Ramananda began in the morning, and they went through lunch, and he's with great enthusiasm, intensity, speaking about Krishna throughout the afternoon, into the evening. The day passed. And Pradyumna Misra was totally satisfied and went and told Mahaprabhu, now I've heard from Ramananda Roy by your grace. So, and estimating activities of the eternal Parshadas of the Supreme Lord, we can understand. The starting point will be aprakrita. And we'll understand they are not under the influence of the modes of nature. So whatever they're doing is not, and particularly if they're doing something we find that is forbidden for others, or prohibited for others, we can understand it's not of the same quality. Nirguna versus saguna. So their position is like that. And they're honoring Mahadev and also expressing gratitude to him for helping them in various ways. But that sloka is mentioned by Mahaprabhu to Pradyumna Misra. Vikriditam brajabadu biritam cha Vishnu. Even here, look, why does it say Vishnu when these are not the pastimes of Vishnu? Vishnu does not engage in Rasa Lila. It's not one of his pastimes. That's why Mahaprabhu said to Venkatabhatta, why does your Lakshmi Devi want to have rasa with my Krishna? But it says here, vikriditam, which indicates Rasa Lila. Brajabadu, idam cha Vishnu. Because it's a caution. Even hearing about Krishna, what to speak of others, our tendency will be to bring it down to our level, project some mundane quality upon it. So the reason Vishnu is mentioned here is because Vishnu is sometimes used to indicate divinity. Not necessarily forearm Vishnu, but God. And these are the pastimes of God, this Rasa Leela with Radharani and Brajagopis. Shraddhan Vato Anushrunayat Attabarna Yedya. And can only be described or heard by Shraddha, Shraddhan Vato Anushrunayat Attabarna Yedya. In the, let's say, Ekramananda, from the right source, from the right personalities. It's a culture of faith. It's not the transfer of information. Krishna consciousness is culture of faith, being under the shelter and guidance of a superior, substantial devotee. It's not the transfer of information. This isn't data, right? Data mining. We're going to hear a particular information and then extract something from that. Right? Any other question? Hridrogam in the last line. Heart disease is what we're suffering from. At the Brijbasi, the actual devotees, they say that when they're feeling separation from Krishna, and Krishna sends Uddhava to console them and give them some hope about his return, Nanda Maharaj at one point says, normally we hear these things like Haratonga Tapam, Tavakatamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibiriditam Kalam. That by hearing about Krishna, remembering him, etc., that you get free from suffering. Because at one point, it's mentioned by Vishwanath Chakrabarti to harmonize some very difficult Siddhantic Siddhanta about separation and union. He says there are two sets of devotees, the union group, there are duplicates, and the separation group. So we hear in one place, Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, and all the others, they didn't leave their houses after Krishna left Vrindavan. And there were cobwebs everywhere where they didn't feed themselves. They were so miserable. They were fed by people from a nearby village, would cook and bring them something. And so Uddhava means one who brings joy. Like he's a festival personified, he brings joy. So Uddhava is the joy giver, bringer to Vrindavan. He tells him, well, maybe you should get out of the house more. He's telling that to Nanda and Yashoda in separation from Krishna. If you would leave your house, then you can go out and see the different places where Krishna performed his pastimes, and that'll bring you some relief. Right? And Nanda Maharaj is saying, we hear that. Normally we hear by seeing the places that remind you of Krishna. You get free from pain, suffering, hearing about his pastimes, seeing his lotus face, hearing the divine sound of his name. He said, but for us, all it does is increase our pain. Our remembrance of Krishna is increasing our pain. But Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur points out, at this point, Uddhava is beginning to realize the unparalleled, extraordinary qualifications of the Brijbasis and why Krishna sent him on the plea of delivering a note so that he could be a first-hand observer of this type of extraordinary devotion, which is the subject matter of Chaitanya Charitamritam. Bahye Vishujalahoy Bitore Anandamoy Krishna Premar Adbhuta Charit. The wonderful quality and characteristic of Krishna Prem, that externally one appears to be suffering, like, as if they've been poisoned, while internally relishing some divine nectarine substance. So they're saying, hearing about Krishna, remembering, chanting about Krishna, remembering him, just putting them in a deeper and deeper state of agony. Viraha bhav. That is union and separation. What's the question? Sahaj?
Samadhi.
Oh, Samadhi.
Samadhi. Natural Samadhi. So she couldn't understand what does it mean.
It probably uses the word Sahaj. That means natural, Sahaja. What is born, naturally expressed. Well, what I just told is an example of that. Nanda Maharaj saying, hearing and remembering about Krishna is increasing his agony. Seeing the places of the pastimes of Krishna is increasing his, the fire of his separation. Right? Samadhi is not sitting around with your eyes closed, in a lotus position, thinking about something. I mean, it is on some level. Like we're told that generally you don't find yogis in Vrindavan. There may be a pastime or two, but not much. But those who are experts at dhyan and meditation to the extreme, to the highest position, they appear in Vrindavan as birds. That's one birth. So their swarup is that of a bird, and they're in a tree, and they're hearing the sound of Krishna's flute. Sometimes they close their eyes and they're holding on to the limbs so they won't whoosh, fall off. The birds, they also have a place. Raghunath Das Goswami says, Yat kinchit trigumaki katamukam goste samastam hitat sarvananda mukunda doitam lilanukulam param. Das Goswami praising the birds and insects of the Dham as being lilanukulam, mukunda doita. They're dear to Mukunda, and lilanukul, they help the pastimes. How they help another position, they take bees. Right? Bzzz. So sometimes Krishna is ready to play the flute, the bees are there, and the bees will go, and Krishna goes, do, oh, thank you, that's the right tune. Like a pitch pipe, the bee is making the humming sound, and that's Krishna's appreciating that, like, oh, I will play in that key, in that tune. That's, Rupa Goswami's example, devotee in Samadhi, he's engaged in upper culture, right? They're not, we should qualify this by saying, it's not abstract meditation. As Guru Maharaj says in his explanation of Gayatri, Dhimahi. Dhimahi, that part. Saying Dhi means buddhi, using your intelligence to serve. That's what it means, not abstract meditation. So that devotee who, it appears he's engaged in abstract meditation, actually we're told he's making param anna in the internal world, sweet rice. And then also in the internal world, he wants to make sure it's not too hot, and he touches with his finger. And in this world, he awakes from his so-called meditation to see his finger is blistering. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's sometimes in his deep meditation, Swarup Damodar is coming to him and giving him some instructions. Other times he's seeing Nityananda Prabhu and Jiva Goswami engaged in the Navadvip Dham Parikrama. So something dynamic. Yam labdva chapram labham manyate nadikam tataha. Says in the Bhagavad Gita, this sloka is called the Samadhi sloka. As upon gaining which, everything is got. Echoing the Upanishad, Yam labdva, what is it? Jagat Tushtam. You know this? Guru Maharaj quotes it all the time. Try to know that one, Yasmin Vigyate Sarvam Eva Vigyatam Bhavati. And then Jagat Tushtam. Know that's one thing upon knowing which everything is known. But then does that mean that you've reached the end of knowing? Right? It doesn't mean like that. Otherwise, how can Krishna say, I don't know how much love Radharani has for me? This is not gyan or knowledge or something measurable or quantifiable by any particular means. Jnana dipena bhashvata. Guru Maharaj said, it can't be that Krishna gives them gyan. In the nutshell slokas. They're the highest level devotees, and Krishna is going to give them gyan. So Guru Maharaj said that can't be gyan in the conventional sense. And he parses it to mean in the depths of separation, Krishna reveals himself to the devotees. He will appear before them. As we told previously, when the gopis and the Gopi Gita, they're praying for Krishna to return. When he finally returns, some gopis would say they're drinking the form of Krishna, they're taking the form of Krishna through the aperture of their eye into their hearts. And then they close their eyes so that he can't get out. Now, let's close our eyes to think of him. But they're closing their eyes to keep him inside. But in another place, Uddhava says to them, Vishwanathan, adhoksaja. Said it also means adha aksaja, means for the eyes to look down. So he said, Uddhava tells them, if you'll all close your eyes, like they do in those meditation classes, they'll tell everyone, all right, now everybody close your eyes. Right? So Uddhava, when it's Uddhava and the Braja Gopis, this is something noteworthy. When Uddhava says, all right, all Braja Gopis, everybody close your eyes. And they close their eyes and they see Krishna within their hearts. And we want to say natural. No diksham, na cha satkriyam, na purushcharja mana gikshate. The gopis, the wives of the brahmanas, they didn't have diksha, they didn't undergo all these different, they didn't live in the Gurukul, they didn't live in the ashram. I don't know if they went on Sankirtan or not. But they have the heart culture to capture Krishna. Krishna is not impressed by rituals. After the Rajasuya Yagya, a mongoose came, a golden mongoose whose tail was not gold. An extraordinary mongoose. He could talk. And everyone was interested in her. Oh, and the mongoose said, "Hear my story." Said once in a previous life, because they just finished this with Krishna's the guest of honor, Yudhisthira, the greatest sacrifice of all time, and maybe some ego came from that. And he starts telling his story that he's by the yagya pit, and he's saying he wanted to complete to make his tail. He was all gold except one section of his tail, and he sort of rolling around there and then looking and seeing that his tail didn't finish becoming completely golden. And he's like, oh. And they all gathered. Mongoose, what is, this is my situation. And he told the story of some Brahmin family and some pastime and a time of famine. Everyone was being rationed something. And to test them, the Lord came as a beggar, an old man who was like, oh, so much hunger, I can't tolerate another minute. And it was the time when they're given their allotment. So first, who is it? The son said, here, take mine. The family's deciding whose rations will be given to the old man. The son, well, give him mine. And the parents are saying, no, how can we give yours? If you're not healthy, then that'll be bad for our family. He's saying, yes, but if my mother and father are not, then what is my reason for living? Then the sister said, well, soon I'll be given to another family, let him take mine. Then the wife, the husband, everyone in the family was willing to totally give, sacrifice themselves. Each one of them for all the others. This was this ideal, dedicated family. And then what happened? He first came perhaps from maybe the son, I forget who, but one by one they gave their ration, and he couldn't stave his hunger. He ate all of the food of all of them. And they made no objection. Then, seeing they'd passed this test and were extraordinary, dedicating individuals, they were given a boon, blessings, and I think it was where where this took place, perhaps some water, something where he turned into a mongoose and then rolled in that area, and he turned gold, except for one part of his tail. So now later he said, so I heard about this Rajasuya Yagya. Krishna guest of honor, Yudhisthira Maharaj, all the Pandavas, all the queens, and I thought, certainly I'll be able to finish my tail here, and I come here and I'm rolling around, and Guru Maharaj's words, he said, whether my tail is becoming completely gold or not, I can't tell, can you? Because it's not. So then, what is the moral of the story? Guru Maharaj said, you have to be humble. This was all meant to check, even the Pandavas, Yudhisthira, everyone there. We started with the Pandavas, we'll finish with the Pandavas. That, he said, because it was such an extraordinary sacrifice, the Rajasuya Yagya, with Krishna as the chief guest, etc., some pride may have come to them. So by the mongoose coming and saying, what I did previously made 95% of my body gold. And what you've done here today, I couldn't even finish my tail. So sometimes Guru Maharaj would say, no pride does the Lord tolerate in the heart of his devotee. Not even the pride that, I'm your servitor. And he mentioned Jesus and Peter. He said, Peter, who was the leader, he was exposed. And he said, tonight one of you will betray me. We see that famous Leonardo picture where they're going, is it I? Is it I? Lord, is it I? And Peter said, it could never be me. And Jesus, you will what? Deny me thrice before the cock crows, I believe is the line, something like that. So Guru Maharaj said, Peter, who was the leader, he was exposed. Even the pride that I'm your devotee, that won't be tolerated. Hare Krishna.